Be healed. I told Kathy I was going to do that, and she said don't. But I can't wear this if I speak. It's just too confining. So anyway, I have one more week of that, I hope, and then I'll be done with it. Good morning. For those of you who don't know us, my name's Bryan Proctor. This is my beautiful wife, Kathy. We've been married coming up on 38 years. We have 3 adult children, 2 daughters and a son. All of them are married. A few of them are here this morning. My son Blake and my daughter Shelby. My son-in-law Dane and my daughter-in-law Bree. So glad that they're here. Anyway, we have 3 granddaughters and we have one on the way. My other daughter and her family are in Arkansas. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to get right into this and share this testimony of what's gone on in our lives the last couple of years. I retired almost 4 years ago from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Half of my 34-year career, I was assigned to patrol stations, and then the other half of my career, I worked at training bureau. I would go back and forth. I would get promoted and go back out to patrol, and then I would come back to training bureau, and I would get promoted, and I would go back. That's kind of how it worked. When I was assigned to the training bureau as a young deputy, I was a defensive tactics instructor, and in 1998, I injured my neck while grappling with recruits during scenario-based training. I had to seek medical treatment, and an MRI revealed that I had bulging discs in my cervical spine. Although they offered surgery, I chose to just use physical therapy and medication to get through it, and a couple of months later, I was back to work full duty. I continued to participate in my job full duty, and I also was involved in other activities. I was an avid runner. I ran 1,000 miles a year for over 25 years. And I'm not saying this to build myself up. I want you to know how active I was, which kind of explains what's happened to me. I ran many races, hundreds of races, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons. I boxed in the Police Olympics. I played on a soccer team in the Police Olympics. I'm very active in my life. But I was always constantly dealing with chronic neck pain. For the next 18 years up to my retirement, I had a lot of issues and flare-ups with my neck and would treat it with rest therapy and pain medication. Surgery was recommended a couple of times over the years, but I declined to do it. In 2015, I injured my lower back and had to seek medical treatment. And the doctor at that time, upon reviewing my MRI, said, "Mr. Proctor, your back is a disaster." So I have a lot of bulging discs in my lower back and in my cervical spine. This is about the time where I started taking prescribed medication every day. In 2016, I retired, and by this time I had built up a tolerance for the pain medication that I was taking. I began taking more and more pills and abusing the number of pills I was taking, sometimes taking up to 10 to 12, sometimes 15 pills a day. It seemed like overnight I found myself dependent and addicted to painkillers. It was a vicious cycle, taking all my pills throughout the month and then coming up 4 or 5 or even a week before I could get my next prescription and going through withdrawal symptoms for that time. This cycle began to affect my marriage and my family relationships and obviously my relationship with the Lord. All of this time, I was hiding this from Kathy and everyone else. She knew something was wrong with me. She thought I was suffering from depression and was constantly asking me what was wrong. But I lied to her and thought I could beat it on my own. I was asking God to help me get through it. At this time, Kathy had all but figured out what was going on, and I confessed to her that I was addicted to pain medication. She was obviously very angry. She was disappointed, and fortunately, she came alongside of me through much prayer and God's help and faithfulness. I was able to get off of the pain medication, and I have been now for 2 years. Well, this past year, I suffered a major setback with my neck, and the pain became unbearable to the point where I was seeking treatment in the emergency room. Because of my history, the doctors would not give me any pain medication. So if that's one thing you might take away from this, don't get addicted to pain medication, because when you really need it, they don't give it to you. Give me anti-inflammatories and steroids, and I endured severe pain in my neck, shoulders, and my upper extremities for about 6 months until I had surgery this past November. What was supposed to be a routine 1-hour anterior cervical discectomy infusion took over 2 hours, and my surgeon said it was one of the most difficult cases he'd ever operated on. My spinal cord was actually pinched, and several nerves were compressed underneath discs, and he feared paralyzing me while manipulating my neck during the surgery. He told me that if I had waited much longer to have surgery, I could have become paralyzed. 8 weeks after surgery, I have absolutely no pain in my neck, my upper back, and extremities. God has answered our prayers and the many prayers of my family and friends. I thank God for his love and his mercies and his faithfulness in my life. And Kathy has a few things she'd like to share about also.
Good morning, church family. There's something that I have found over the years, that good news is so much easier to share than bad news and difficult news. But as Bryan has shared, this past 2 years, we have faced a difficult situation in our marriage and within our family. When trial and tribulation enter our lives, it is difficult to share. But what we have seen over the past couple of years is that God has been faithful to be with us every step of the way of this trial, of this tribulation. And, you know, maybe it's because that when you're in the midst of the trial and the tribulation, that we see God's faithful hand more frequently, or maybe it's just that we are looking for it and we need it, and we feel it and we know he's there. And God has been faithful to us every turn of this trial. But in the beginning, as Bryan shared, I felt very betrayed, and I was hurt by Bryan's addiction, by him hiding all that was going on within his life. And that anger that I felt turned into bitterness. And the bitterness built a wall between us. And I also believed that at this particular time, when all of this was happening, that the trust that was broken between us could not be restored. And I share this very low point in this journey with all of you because it is a pivotal point for me personally. There was a point in the very beginning that I just contemplated leaving. I contemplated leaving Bryan. And I'm not proud to say that I came to that point. But in that contemplation of thinking that it was just better for me to leave, God in his faithfulness brought one word to my mind, and that was helpmate. He brought that word to my mind as I was contemplating leaving. And as that word just resonated in my mind and in my heart, it brought me back to July 17th, 1982, when I pledged my love to Bryan Proctor. When Kathy Pereira committed to being Bryan Proctor's wife and his helpmate. And there wasn't anyone else, no other woman for such a time as this, that God called to be Bryan's helpmate. It was me. And in that moment, that very low moment, God broke my heart. And he allowed me to come to a place of forgiveness. And by really examining my selfish desire at that point and setting aside that selfishness and that really that flesh that was acting out, setting that aside and thinking about what is it that my husband needs from me to help him through this difficult time. We can get past the betrayal, the feelings of betrayal. We can get past the hurt. We can get past all of those things. And God, in his grace, has helped us to get past all of those feelings and emotions. And he has caused healing and restoration. And trust is rebuilding within our marriage. And, early on in our marriage and Bryan's career with the Sheriff's Department, I became a prayer warrior for him. Every time that he walked outside of our home to go to work, I asked the Lord to put a hedge of protection over him. Please bring him home safe and alive. And every shift, God, in his faithfulness, did bring Bryan home. And yes, he allowed an injury to happen over the course of his career. But that injury, I see it also as a sign of his faithfulness as well, because we are here today to testify to God's faithfulness through all of this. And no one ever said that marriage was easy. Marriage takes 110% of ourselves giving to our spouse and putting their need before our own. And the Christian walk is not easy, and it takes dying to self every day and even moment by moment, as I found myself dying to self so many times on this journey. And I stand, of course, on all the promises of God, but there is a promise that I have been holding so close to my heart lately, and that is that God promises that he will never leave us or forsake us. And God has proved this to be true over and over as we have faced this trial. He has not left us in the ashes, but he has turned the ashes into something beautiful for him, for his glory. In Genesis 32:10, Jacob, faced with a very difficult situation of his own, says to God, I am unworthy of all the loving kindness and all of the faithfulness that you have shown your servant. And Bryan and I, we are humbled by the grace and the goodness that God has extended to us, and so very thankful for his faithfulness.
I just wanted to say that if our story has touched anyone's life in here that's dealing with some of the similar circumstances that we found ourselves in, please ask God to help you get through that, and also feel free to talk to Kathy and I. We'd be more than happy to help you.